It's quite extraordinary, isn't it? How a moment of pique, a bit of bad blood between two kings, could lay the foundation for centuries of a nation's money. Our story begins not in a dusty mint or a banker's office, but on the muddy, bloody battlefields of the Third Crusade. Imagine the scene. King Richard I of England, the famed Lionheart, has just conquered the city of Acre. In a fit of triumph, he tears down the banner of Duke Leopold V of Austria. A terrible insult. Leopold, quite understandably, was rather miffed. He nursed this grudge, waiting for the perfect moment for a spot of revenge. He didn't have to wait terribly long. The moment came when Richard, on his way home from the Holy Land, found himself shipwrecked and had to travel disguised through enemy territory, namely, Austria. Near Vienna, he was recognized, perhaps by a fancy ring, or his regal disdain for peasant food, and promptly clapped in irons by the still fuming Duke Leopold. A king is a rather valuable prisoner, you see. Leopold demanded a king's ransom, an absolutely colossal sum, 150,000 marks of silver. This was an astronomical amount of money, weighing around 35 tons. It was a fortune that would take England years to raise, nearly bankrupting the entire kingdom in the process. Once the silver arrived in Austria, Leopold had a rather wonderful problem on his hands: what to do with a giant mountain of precious metal. You can't very well pop down to the shops with a cart full of silver bars. He needed a way to turn this raw wealth into something usable, something that shouted, "I am a powerful and important duke." So, in 1194, he did something revolutionary. He used the English silver to establish a new mint in Vienna. This wasn't just about making change. It was a grand statement of economic independence and a display of newfound power, all funded by his royal rival. From this enormous pile of ransom silver, the very first Austrian coins were struck. These were small silver coins called pfennigs. They were a tangible symbol of this incredible story, a direct link between a royal feud and the birth of a national currency. Each little coin held within it the echo of a crusade, a captured king, and a duke's revenge. It's a beginning more suited to a grand opera or a Shakespearean play than to the dry world of finance. But that's the wonderful thing about history, isn't it? It's rarely ever dry. And so, Austrian coinage began, not with a whimper, but with a king's ransom. Following the dramatic influx of Richard the Lionheart's silver, the Vienna Mint got to work. The first coins to jingle in Austrian pockets were the aforementioned pfennigs. These were small, thin silver pieces, the pocket change of the medieval world. They weren't terribly fancy, mind you. Early designs were often simple, featuring a cross on one side and perhaps the image of a local ruler or a patron saint on the other. But their importance went far beyond their humble appearance. For the first time, Austria had its own standardized currency, a tool that helped trade flourish and allowed dukes to pay their soldiers and fund their grand building projects. As the centuries rolled on, the power of the Habsburg dynasty grew, and with it, the complexity and artistry of their coins. The simple pfennig was joined by other denominations, like the groschen. The design started to become more ambitious. Instead of just a simple cross, you might see a more detailed portrait of the ruling duke, complete with his titles and coat of arms. This was branding, medieval style. Each coin was a tiny traveling billboard, proclaiming the power, piety, and legitimacy of the man who issued it. It was a way of saying, "This land is mine, and this is my money." The materials used for these coins were primarily silver, which was mined in the nearby Alps. The value of a coin was directly tied to the amount of precious metal it contained. This could be a bit tricky. Sometimes when a ruler was short on cash, they might be tempted to mix the silver with less valuable metals like copper. This process, known as debasement, would make the coins look the same, but contain less silver. People weren't fools, of course. They would quickly lose trust in the currency, leading to economic chaos. It was a constant balancing act for medieval rulers. The need for money versus the need for trust. So, the medieval period for Austrian coins was one of establishment and evolution. It began with a sudden burst of silver and grew into a sophisticated system that reflected the political landscape. Every time a new ruler came to power, new coins would be issued, each bearing their own unique mark. These little pieces of metal tell a story of shifting borders, growing dynasties, and the everyday economic life of people hundreds of years ago. From a duke's revenge blossomed a system that would become the foundation of a great European power's economy, one silver pfennig at a time. As the Middle Ages gave way to the Renaissance, something wonderful happened in the mountains of the Tyrol region of Austria. In a valley named Joachimsthal, which is now in the Czech Republic but was then Habsburg territory, a massive new vein of silver was discovered around 1518. This wasn't just a little trickle, it was a torrent of wealth. To handle this silver bonanza, the rulers decided to mint a new type of coin, a large, heavy, and impressively pure silver piece. Because they came from Joachimsthal, they were called Joachimsthalers, which was a bit of a mouthful. People soon shortened it to just thaler. And just like that, a word was born that would give us the dollar. The thaler was the superstar of its age. It was the first truly international currency of the modern era, trusted across Europe and beyond for its size and high silver content. Unlike the small, fiddly pfennigs, the thaler was a statement piece. It was big, it was beautiful, and it was worth a lot. Holding one felt substantial. It was the kind of coin a wealthy merchant would use to close a big deal, or a king would use to pay his mercenaries. Its reliability made it the backbone of European trade for centuries, a stable measure of value in a very unstable world. Habsburg rulers, especially Holy Roman Emperor Maximilian I, saw the thaler as a magnificent propaganda tool. The large surface area of the coin was a perfect canvas for showcasing their power and prestige. The designs became incredibly intricate and artistic. One side would often feature a stunningly detailed portrait of the emperor, perhaps on horseback in full armor, looking every bit the noble and powerful leader. The other side would be covered in complex coats of arms, representing all the different lands and titles the emperor held. Every coin was a miniature work of art, a metal manifesto of Habsburg glory. This era cemented Austria's reputation as a major player in European numismatics. The study of coins. The Austrian mints, particularly in Hall in Tyrol, became centers of innovation, developing new technologies like the roller press, which allowed for faster and more uniform coin production. The thaler wasn't just money, it was a symbol of the immense wealth flowing from the Alpine mines and the vast political power of the Habsburg emperors who controlled it. It set a new standard for what a coin could be. Not just a medium of exchange, but a carrier of art, identity, and imperial ambition. Now we come to a coin so successful, so trusted, and so beloved that it simply refused to die. I'm talking about the Maria Theresa Thaler. First minted in 1741, this magnificent silver coin bears the portrait of the formidable Habsburg Empress, Maria Theresa. She was a remarkable ruler, the only female sovereign in 650 years of the dynasty, and her coin was every bit as impressive as she was. The design is iconic on one side, a rather matronly but powerful bust of the Empress. On the other, the imperial double-headed eagle of the Habsburgs. It is a masterpiece of Baroque design. What makes this particular thaler so extraordinary is its astonishingly long life. After Maria Theresa's death in 1780, the Austrian mint made a very clever decision. Instead of changing the design or the date, they just kept striking the coin with the year 1780 frozen on it. Why? Because the coin had become unbelievably popular, not just in Europe, but across the Middle East and Africa. Merchants from Yemen to Ethiopia trusted this specific coin above all others. They knew its silver content was pure, and they recognized the portrait of the powerful empress. It became the de facto currency for a huge part of the world. For over 200 years, the Maria Theresa Thaler was the most important trade coin in the world. It was used to buy coffee in the Arabian Peninsula, to pay for goods along the spice routes, and as a store of wealth in North Africa. It was so essential to local economies that even when other European powers tried to introduce their own currencies, people would refuse them, demanding the familiar silver coin with the fat lady on it, as she was sometimes affectionately known. The Austrian mint, and later other mints in places like London, Paris, and Rome, produced hundreds of millions of these coins, all bearing the date 1780, to meet the insatiable global demand. Even today, the Austrian mint still produces the Maria Theresa Thaler as an official restrike for collectors and investors. It is a living piece of history, a testament to a time when a single coin could dominate global trade through sheer trust and consistency. It's a wonderful example of how an object can take on a life of its own, far beyond the intentions of its original creators. The coin story is not just about Austria. It's a story of global trade, cultural exchange, and the enduring power of a good reputation. It's more than a coin. It's an institution. As we march into the 19th century, the political map of Europe was being redrawn. The old Holy Roman Empire was dissolved, and in its place, the Austrian Empire was formally proclaimed in 1804. A new empire, of course, needs new money to signify the change. The trusty thaler was still around, but a new system was introduced based on the krone, or crown. This change reflected a broader European trend towards decimalization, trying to make money systems more logical and easier to calculate. Out went the complicated system of pfennigs, groschen and thalers, and in came a simpler system of heller and kronen. The coins of the Austrian Empire were every bit as grand as their predecessors. The dominant figure on these coins was Emperor Franz Joseph I, who had an incredibly long reign from 1848 to 1916. For 68 years, his face was on Austria's money, aging from a young, clean-shaven man to the familiar elderly monarch with his magnificent whiskers. These coins traced the life of a single man and the history of an entire empire. On the reverse, the double-headed eagle remained a powerful symbol, a holdover from the Holy Roman Empire that now represented the dual monarchy of Austria-Hungary, formed in 1867. This was also the great age of gold coins. Alongside the silver kronen, the mint produced beautiful gold coins, most famously the 10, 20, and 100 koruna pieces. These were the coins of the elite, used for international transactions, and stored as a sign of serious wealth. They were symbols of the opulence and grandeur of Vienna during its golden age, a time of waltzes, coffeehouses, and incredible artistic and scientific progress. The coins themselves were beautifully crafted, with the precise, elegant style that characterized the era. They were a perfect reflection of the confidence and cultural richness of the Austro-Hungarian Empire at its peak. However, this golden age was not to last. The immense cost of World War I put a tremendous strain on the empire's finances. Gold and silver coins disappeared from circulation as the government needed the precious metal to fund the war effort. They were replaced by coins made of iron and other cheap metals, a grim reflection of the harsh realities of total war. When the empire collapsed in 1918, so did its currency. The grand coins of Franz Joseph I became relics of a lost world, their eagles and crowns symbols of an age that had vanished forever in the trenches of the Great War. With the collapse of the Austro-Hungarian Empire in 1918, Austria became a small republic. The old imperial symbols were no longer appropriate. The double-headed eagle and the portraits of emperors had to go. A new country needed a new identity, and that identity had to be reflected in its currency. After a period of crippling hyperinflation that made the old krone worthless, a new currency was introduced in 1925. The shilling. The shilling was to be the monetary symbol of the First Austrian Republic, a currency for the common person, not the emperor. The designs of the new shilling coins were a deliberate break from the past. Instead of emperors and imperial eagles, they featured symbols that represented the new democratic republican Austria. You saw images of agriculture, like sheaves of wheat, and industry, celebrating the work of ordinary people. The coins showed famous Austrian landmarks, like the magnificent St. Stephen's Cathedral in Vienna. The eagle was still there, but it was transformed. The crowns were gone, and the imperial orb and scepter were replaced with a sickle and a hammer, symbols of the peasants and workers. Broken chains were added later to symbolize liberation. The artistry of the coins remained remarkably high. The Austrian mint continued its tradition of excellence, producing coins that were both beautiful and meaningful. For example, a lovely silver 2-shilling coin was issued featuring the composer Franz Schubert, celebrating Austria's immense cultural heritage rather than its military or imperial past. This was a conscious choice to redefine what it meant to be Austrian. The nation's identity was now rooted in its culture, its landscape, and its people, not in the power of its former ruling dynasty. It was a quieter, more modest form of national pride. This first shilling served Austria through the turbulent interwar years. It was a symbol of hope and a new beginning, an attempt to forge a modern identity out of the ashes of an ancient empire. The coins from this period are fascinating because they capture a nation in transition, trying to find its footing in a new and often hostile world. They tell a story of a country looking away from its imperial past and towards a different future, one based on democratic values and cultural achievement. The shilling was, in every sense, the people's currency. The story of the Austrian shilling took a dark turn in 1938 with the Anschluss, the annexation of Austria into Nazi Germany. Suddenly, Austria ceased to exist as an independent nation. The shilling was abolished and replaced by the German Reichsmark. Austrian coins, with their symbols of national pride and independence, were withdrawn from circulation. It was a brutal monetary conquest that mirrored the political one. The Austrian mint in Vienna was even forced to produce coins for the Third Reich. It was a grim, painful chapter in the nation's long numismatic history. After the devastation of World War II and the end of Nazi rule in 1945, Austria was restored as an independent nation, but it was a country in ruins. One of the first and most important steps in rebuilding the nation was to re-establish its own currency. The shilling was brought back, a powerful symbol of resurrected sovereignty. However, the country was impoverished by the war, so the first coins of the Second Republic were not made of silver or gold. They were minted from cheap materials like zinc and aluminium, a stark reminder of the difficult economic situation. Despite the humble materials, these coins were incredibly significant. They represented a new start. The designs were simple and clean. The eagle, now with broken chains on its legs to symbolize freedom from tyranny, was proudly displayed once more. Denominations like the 10 Groschen, 50 Groschen, and 1 shilling coins became the everyday currency of a nation slowly getting back on its feet. As Austria's economy miraculously recovered in the 1950s and 1960s, the famous Wirtschaftswunder, the quality of the coins improved. Silver coins were reintroduced for higher denominations, like the 5 and 10 shilling pieces. These post-war shillings became a beloved and stable part of Austrian life for over 50 years. Austrians grew up with these coins, using them to buy their first ice cream or their daily newspaper. The designs became familiar and comforting, featuring national symbols like the Edelweiss flower on the 1 shilling coin or the Lipizzaner horse on the 5 shilling coin. These coins were more than just money. They were a constant, tangible presence that told a story of recovery, stability, and renewed national pride. They were the quiet soundtrack to Austria's remarkable journey from the rubble of war to a prosperous and peaceful democracy. By the 1980s, the Austrian mint, with its centuries of experience, decided to step onto the world stage in a big way. It was the era of international bullion coins, with countries like South Africa and Canada having great success. Austria wanted to create a coin that could compete with the best, a coin that was not just a store of value, but also a beautiful work of art. To do this, they turned to one of Austria's most beloved cultural institutions, the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra, widely considered one of the finest in the world. What a wonderfully Austrian idea! And so, in 1989, the Vienna Philharmonic coin was born. Struck in pure gold, it was an instant sensation. The design, by the mint's chief engraver, Thomas Pessendorfer, is simply breathtaking. One side features a stunningly detailed image of the great organ from the Golden Hall of the Vienna Musikverein, the orchestra's home. The other side shows a beautiful arrangement of orchestral instruments, a cello in the center, surrounded by violins, a bassoon, a harp, and a Viennese horn. It's a coin that doesn't celebrate a ruler or a military victory, but the universal language of music. The Philharmonic, or Philly as it's affectionately known by investors, was a runaway success. It quickly became one of the best-selling bullion coins in the world. Collectors and investors loved it for its beauty, its purity, and the reputation of the Austrian mint that stood behind it. Its popularity was so immense that the mint later introduced silver and even platinum versions of the coin, all featuring the same gorgeous musical design. It has become the definitive European bullion coin, a modern classic that perfectly represents Austria's deep connection to high culture. The creation of the Philharmonic coin shows how the Austrian mint has managed to stay relevant in the modern world. It has brilliantly combined its ancient traditions of craftsmanship and quality with a modern understanding of the global market. The coin is a masterclass in branding, linking the value of precious metal with the priceless cultural value of Austrian music. It's a fitting evolution of the Austrian coin story, a journey that began with a king's ransom and has now produced a coin that sings with the sound of an orchestra. It is a true testament to Austria's ability to innovate while honoring its rich heritage. The final chapter, for now, in the long story of Austrian currency, came on the 1st of January 2002. On that day, along with 11 other European nations, Austria said a fond farewell to its beloved shilling and embraced a new, shared currency, the euro. It was a momentous change. For the first time in over 800 years, since the days of Richard the Lionheart's ransom, Austria would no longer have its very own, uniquely Austrian currency. The shilling, which had seen the nation through republican birth, war, and reconstruction, was retired. It was a nostalgic moment for many Austrians. While the banknotes are the same across the Eurozone, each country gets to design its own national side for the coins. This presented Austria with a wonderful opportunity: how to represent the nation on these new pan-European coins. The Austrian mint chose a range of subjects that beautifully encapsulate the country's identity. For the smaller cent coins, they chose alpine flowers, the gentian, the edelweiss, and the primrose, celebrating Austria's stunning natural landscape. It was a lovely, gentle nod to the nation's green heart. This choice continued a tradition of featuring national flora on its coins, connecting the new with the old. For the middle-range coins, the focus shifted to Austria's magnificent architecture. The 10, 20, and 50-cent coins feature Vienna's St. Stephen's Cathedral, the Belvedere Palace, and the Secession Building, respectively. These choices represent different eras of Austrian history: Gothic, Baroque, and Art Nouveau. It's a tour of the nation's artistic and architectural soul in your pocket. The higher value coins celebrate famous Austrians. The €1 coin features Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, perhaps the country's most famous son, while the €2 coin honors Bertha von Suttner, a pioneering pacifist and Nobel Peace Prize winner, representing Austria's commitment to peace and progress. And so, the story of Austrian coins continues, now as part of a larger European narrative. The Austrian mint remains a world leader, producing not only these circulation euro coins, but also a stunning array of collector coins and the famous Philharmonic. It has masterfully blended centuries of tradition with cutting-edge technology. From the first pfennig struck from ransom silver to the modern euros celebrating Mozart and mountains, Austrian coins have always been more than just money. They are miniature metal canvases that tell the epic story of a nation, its rulers, its art, its struggles, and its triumphs. They are history you can hold in your hand.